Right, so I want to start with this question. When did you first encounter Charles David Hammett?
Well, that must have been when his first book came out. He came to the bookstore, just wanted an opportunity to read. Publishers have never been able to give young writers the support they deserve and that they need really to get those books out there. And Hammitt took it upon himself to hit the road. Went to every mystery bookstore that expressed an interest in mysteries, and offered to do a reading. I liked the way he talked about the book. I liked the gave me a copy. I read a little bit of it on the spot, and I said, sure, come and read.
And what was your initial impression of Hammett when you met him?
He was cocky. I mean, if you have that name Hammitt, you have to be, especially if you're going to be a writer. And in some ways, I think fate decided that he was going to be a crime writer, because Hammitt with an I, that's his real name. That's not a joke. And once he decided he was going to be a writer, there's no way you're not going to be compared to Hammitt with an E. And I think that, as much as anything, really directed him to write mystery novels. Because not only did he want to write mystery novels, he set them in the late 20s and the 30s. He went into the world of Hammitt. And not just Hammitt, Chandler, McCoy, all those great early hard-boiled, early noir writers. That's the world he loved. And I think as much as to the public and critics, and to himself and even them, he wanted to prove that he could write like them, as good as them, and not have it be pastiche. He wasn't trying to make a joke. He loved that world and that writing, and he wanted to do it as good as they did.
Did anyone hear him say goodbye? No more lullaby. No more lullaby. No more lullaby. No more lullaby.
Probably do the first shot right there in that corner. I think for lighting, the angle of it, that's going to be our best bet. Brooke, what do you think? Do you think this angle right here, this corner?
Yeah.
So you're kind of shelving some of the books as I come in. I'll come up into this. I'll try to hit the mark right about here and position of this angle. Great. I think we're ready to get started. Excuse me. Hello? Excuse me.
Yeah, what do you want?
Hi, are you the owner here?
Yeah.
My name's Jackson Bean. We spoke on the phone a couple of days ago. I mentioned that I was going to be coming to town.
Nah, don't think we did.
Well, I'm the independent filmmaker. Remember, I'm working on the film about Dashiell Hammett and his time with the Continental Trust Company in Baltimore.
Yeah, it's coming back, yeah. Maybe we did.
Right. Well, the reason that I'm here is that I'm trying to find Charles David Hammett.
Yeah, his book's next room, mystery section.
No, I mean, I'm actually trying to find Charles David Hammett.
Yeah, he doesn't live here, this is a bookstore.
Right, but he collects his mail here, right?
Yeah, a bunch of people collect their mail here.
Well, I've been corresponding with him about my film. You know, when I heard that he was based in Baltimore, I thought that he would be the perfect person to speak with. And the thing is, I am not an expert on this subject, and I think Dashiell Hammett would be an interesting. I thought it would be an interesting subject for a film to see what made him tick as a writer.
Here we go. Frederick Brown, that's who you should make your movie about.
Frederick Brown? I
Yeah.
never heard of him.
Well, make a movie about him, learn something.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do here. You see, my idea was to try to get to the bottom of what made Dashiell Hammett tick as a writer, what made him one of the greatest writers of mysteries. And my theory is that to understand that, I have to walk in his footsteps and go back to his time as a Pinkerton detective here in Baltimore and try to understand how those experiences shaped his approach to writing.
You know, mystery writers are a curious bunch. You try and learn everything about him. It doesn't answer all the questions.
Well, in trying to get to the root of Dashiell Hammett's work, that's where Charles David Hammett comes in. That's Hammitt. No relation. You see, I was talking with a lot of people in the crime fiction community, trying to get some pointers on where to begin with this project, and they all told me the same thing. They said, if you want to make a film about Dashiell Hammett, or any mystery writer, or anything to do with crime fiction, there's one place you start, and that's with Charles David Hammett.
Yeah, he knows a thing or two.
He certainly does. He's been a tremendous help, but we've been corresponding through the mail, and that's why I'm coming to you now, because I have this dilemma. The trail's gone cold. His letters stopped about a month ago. I haven't been able to get through, and there's absolutely no other way to get in touch with him. So I wanted to come here and see if you might have any information that could help me find him.
You know, maybe he did everything he could for you already. Maybe you don't need to find the guy.
Well, we were right in the middle of research. We were discussing some very interesting ideas about this, and he was really putting me on the trail of beginning to think about this beyond just the information. You see, I want to walk in Hammitt's footsteps, Dashiell Hammitt's footsteps. I wanted to come here to Baltimore to see where he worked and to try to immerse myself in that kind of environment and see how that might have shaped him as a writer. And Charles David Hammitt was helping me get ideas of where to look, basically what clues to follow. And now, nothing.
You know, that's not unlike Hammitt. Yeah, he disappears from time to time. It's not the first, probably not going to be the last.
Disappears? You think he's disappeared?
Disappeared, gone somewhere. You know, these mystery writers are a bit of a mystery themselves sometimes.
I'm curious, when was the last time that you saw Hammitt or spoke with him?
Are you going to give me the third degree or something?
Hey, I'm an independent filmmaker. This is like an investigation.
Cops. Don't like them. Filmmakers. Looks like I don't like them either.
Well, I just thought that you might be able to help. I've been I feel like I've been completely thrown off the trail.
Look, you're going to buy the Frederick Brown book and make a movie about the guy? Otherwise, I don't see what I can do for you. The guy clearly doesn't want to be found.
Well, look, just do me a favor, all right? Look, here's my contact information. If he comes in or if you hear anything from him, please just get in touch with me.
Yeah, sure.
I appreciate it.
Buy a book when you're out there.
If you want to talk, do you want to talk about this building now that we're here, and do this as like a behind-the-scenes type of?
I think let's just get the footage.
I'm gonna get footage. Okay. Walking in Dashiell Hammitt's footsteps. Imagine as a Pinkerton detective coming to work here at the Continental Trust Company building.
So the story I read in Nathan's book is that Hammitt answered an ad for a different job, and then they hired him to be a detective, which is what they would do instead of. It was a strategy so they could get people from different walks of life and sort of test them to see if they think they would be good for the job. They would actually ask for salesmen because Pinkerton thought that the qualities needed to be a salesperson was very similar to being a detective. And so Hammitt thought he was going to be a salesman. And I said, hey, you want to be a private eye? And he said, sure.
About those birds up there,
Well, according to Nathan Ward's book, those birds might have been the inspiration for the Maltese falcon. But someone else in the book is quoted as saying that they were detectives who were trained by Hammitt, and at a point had a object on their desk, some sort of a not an actual Maltese falcon, but they claimed that they had an item on their desk that inspired him to make the falcon. Well, who knows?
Yeah.
At this point, nobody's left alive that really knows where that came from, where the falcon came from.
It's the stuff dreams are made of.
Hammitt has sure inspired a lot of dreams.
Oh, good. You're still here.
Go away! It's almost closing time.
I know, but I just wanted to ask if you'd heard anything from Hammitt.
Don't you got anything better to do than bother me?
Well, I've been down by the old site of the old Continental Trust Company building all day, walking in Dashiell Hammitt's footsteps, and I feel like I'm absolutely no closer to understanding him as a writer, what made him such a great mystery writer, what made him tick. I need to talk to Charles David Hammitt.
I could have told you that you wouldn't have figured any of that out.
I just hoped that by spending time here, coming to Baltimore, I would have a better idea for this film.
I did find something for you. Nathan Ward's book on Hammitt. You read this?
No, I haven't.
He had a lot of the same questions you're asking. How did Hammitt go from the Pinkerton to being the great innovator of American crime fiction? Read that, you might learn a thing or two.
You see, I'd hoped to learn something by immersing myself in the city, in the environment in which Hammitt got his professional start. You know, I was thinking about how these writers use cities. They're so closely linked in their work. You know, Raymond Chandler in Los Angeles, Hammitt's books in San Francisco.
You read Lawrence Block?
Lawrence Block? No.
Of course you have. He's great. That's who you should be making a movie about. Make one about Block, one about Brown. Block's one of the great writers of New York City. You read After the First Death, the Matt Scudders. He'll take you neighborhood through neighborhood. And the Scudders go for decades, so you can really see New York change. But if you read those books, you see New York. Is that really going to tell you more about Lawrence Block, though? Maybe. Maybe not. There's a little bit more to these people than just that.
Well, I have to tell you, as I've been continuing this little investigation of my own, I find that my own focus is shifting away from Dashiell Hammett to Charles David Hammett. And what could have possibly happened to him? Where did he go?
As I said, he does this from time to time. He just disappears. Not the first. Certainly not going to be the last.
You said that before, disappears. I mean, what do you think happened to him?
Who knows? Mystery writers are a strange bunch. Sometimes they need a little mystique in their own lives before they put it on the page.
Well, I'm only familiar with the incident of Agatha Christie's disappearance back in the 20s.
You know, it's funny. Still never read Christie. She's got a lot of books. Hopefully I got a little bit of time left. Not gray yet. You never know. The way you're trying my patience, I might go to my grave early just to get rid of you. Anyway. You know Goodis? No. Of course you don't. You don't know much about crime fiction. He's a Philly guy. Yeah, I'm sold out at the moment. He's popular. He should be. He's great. Another guy you should make a movie about. Anyway, I said he's a Philly guy. Wrote about gutter types, drunks. And he would spend his time in the bars, the alleys, go down to the docks, disappear for a few days. He always came home. He lived with his folks. His mom knew he'd be back. She didn't worry. He'd go up to his room, shut the door, get out the typewriter, and that's where he'd bang out the pulp stories, the paperback novels. Point is, he had to disappear. Was it for research for the stories, or was it maybe a little bit of himself that just had to live a little bit of the life he was writing about? Who knows? Here's another guy, Day Keene. All sold out. He disappeared from time to time. The more you read of his stuff, you see the same trope over and over again. Guy gets conked on the head, blacks out, wakes up, usually next to a corpse. As far as I know, Keene himself never woke up next to a body, but he had a bit of a drinking problem and I think woke up one or two mysterious places. He didn't know how he got there. One of them was when he was living down in Mexico. The story goes he wakes up in a hotel, no wallet, no money, can't pay the bill. Calls down to the front desk, asks for a typewriter. They send one up, bangs out a story, wires it to his an agent in New York, gets in touch, says he's got a story but he needs money fast. Keene was selling pretty well in the 40s. Agent on the spot says, yeah, I'll buy it. Here's the money. Keene pays the hotel bill, walks out of there free man. He winds up using the incident in My Flesh is Sweet. Point being, he had to disappear. Did he know that he was going to use that story, for the novel? I don't think so, but there's just something, you got to get lost once in a while. Speaking of getting lost, you should get lost. It's just about closing time.
Just a few more questions. You think, though, that this disappearance could be essential to the mystery writer's process in some way?
Yeah, that's what I said.
So, in other words, Charles David Hammitt could be wandering around out there somewhere, or holed up in a hotel room in Mexico.
Yeah, it could be. Could be there. Could be somewhere else.
Or somewhere else, you think?
What do you think? You're the filmmaker.
You know, I've been told that Hammitt has one of the largest, if not the largest, collections of pulp fiction in the entire world.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
Right? Now, I've also heard that these collectors can be a pretty cutthroat bunch.
Yeah, they're a little crazy.
Right? Well, do you think it's possible that Hammitt had something that one of them wanted badly enough that they wanted to get their hands on, that they would do so at any cost, just to get to it?
Not on your life. Find another profession. If that's your idea of storytelling, you wouldn't have cut it in the pulps.
Yeah, but you know, I think that filmmaking is a lot like detective work. You know, you're piecing together these clues. It's like solving a little puzzle.
As I said, it's a lot like detective work. You annoy people. Like me.
Well, tell me, what do you think? I mean, how would you go about an investigation like this?
I'd buy this book. Edgar Allan Poe. You ever read him?
Poe? Yes, no, him I have read.
Well, maybe you need to reread him. Murders in the Rue Morgue opens up this great passage that basically lays out what the American school of crime fiction is all going to be. And he uses the metaphor of chess players. He talks about the difference between the ingenious player and the analytic player. The ingenious player knows the rulebook inside and out, knows every move to make and every counter move. The analytic, on the other hand, knows what to look for in the other people. It's about human nature. That's what Pinkerton knew about the detective agency. That's the school of detection that Hammitt learned. That's what Hammitt wrote about, human nature. And it all goes back to Poe. Buy those two books, you might learn a little something for this movie you're making.
You know, you've given me a lot to think about with this. I was wondering, do you think, is there a chance you might be amenable to sitting for some interviews with me for this film?
Me? Big screen?
Yeah,
Movie star?
yeah.
How much you gonna pay me?
Well, it's not much. I mean,
What does Costner make?
Costner? Well, you can't match that, but I could buy a book.
You can buy 2 books.
Fine, I'll buy 2 books.
The longer you stay here, you're gonna have to buy 3 books.
All right, I'm going. So, can I speak with you then about this?
You buy the books, ask at the front desk. At the register, they'll give you my address. Now leave me alone. Still got some work I gotta do.
All right, great. Well, I'll get your address, get in touch with you, and I'll speak with you tonight, Mr. What was your name again?
Right. James Wright.
Right. All right. Thank you.
See you at 7. Not before.
So, all right. So this is going to be framed as a 2-shot. Colin here.
I'd be
there.
there in case I need him.
Yeah. This camera is going to be running simultaneously
Yeah.
to get the cutaway on you that we'll splice into. And we're also going to be running this to get the entire two-shot between us.
Where are you going to be?
I'm going to be sitting right
Oh, you're going to be sitting there. Okay, so I'll hide my.
His top of his head is cut.
All right. Well, I guess we're ready.
She's looking, making sure she looks good for her
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah. I think he'll be fine. I'll move. I can move.
I think he knows that he's not going to be in this movie. He's
Yeah.
not happy with. He's going to talk to his agent about this.
And all right, this is interview scene 1. All right, James. Thanks again for agreeing to talk with me for this film.
Oh, my pleasure. Makeup and do I need to in frame?
No, yeah, you're fine.
Which way do I look?
Just
Camera?
right at me. Yeah.
Okay.
You had mentioned when you first met Hammitt that you were basically just two fellow collectors and fans.
Yes.
Is that right? What did you know about his work prior to being a writer? His collecting and his literary criticism.
I mean, I knew what he told me in order to get me to take the book and buy some copies. He was a collector. He wrote for fanzines. But he could talk the talk. He wasn't somebody just relying off reprints. The names he was dropping, the familiarity was very. It was quick to see that he had the original pulp magazines. He had read the stories that no one else had read since the 20s and 30s.
You've talked about the weight of influence that this name Hammitt meant for him. Did you ever consider the possibility that could have been a pseudonym?
No, he told me that was his real name, and I never saw a reason to question that. He didn't show his birth certificate, if that's what you want to know. I mean, he's a weirdly private guy in a lot of ways. More so now than back then, but I can't imagine anyone choosing that name.
And you don't think that it's possible that there's anyone else out there writing under the name of Hammitt with an I?
I've never sat down and watched him at typewriter. 'Cause he tells me he still uses a typewriter, not a computer. But I've seen the manuscripts. They come to me before they go to the agents, and not that I read his mail, but he asks me make sure I put them in a new envelope. He likes that sense of privacy. The typewriters all look the same to me.
Let me ask you, alternately, do you think it's possible that he's written under other names that even you're not aware of, and that there could be far more stories that he's authored out there?
No matter what you're writing, you probably at some point in your career are going to do something anonymous or write something that doesn't appear under your name. Whether it's an office memo your boss puts their name on, or a ghost-written novel. I don't think it's likely that there's a lot of other Hammitt work. As I said, he was cocky. He wanted his name, and he could have picked another name other than Hammitt, but he kept that name that he was born with, knowing what that was going to mean. So I can't imagine him putting putting someone else's name on his work. And that said, the more success he has, the more of an enigma he becomes. He's far more private now than he ever was. And I think that's only going to continue the more his books sell. So I don't see him inviting, more ways for his mask to come down.
Just say straight first, and then give it to about 10 or 15 seconds, and then pan over, and then I'm going to come around the fence and come in. You don't have to move. Just follow me. Keep me in the frame is all I'm saying.
All I'm saying is I got from here to over, so I don't
Okay.
need to pan.
All right, get a little closer if you want.
talked about the popularity of Charles David Hammett within the crime fiction community, but I have a feeling that popularity might be a kind of a relative term in this context, especially if we're talking about in relation to writers like Dashiell Hammett or Raymond Chandler in their day. Do you think it's possible for Mr. Writer to have that kind of influence today?
I mean, the short answer is I think no, because things have changed so much. But even in their day, the influence that Chandler and Hammett had was incredible. Hammett emerged right at the birth of the hard-boiled detective story. Some would say, and they wouldn't be wrong, that he was the major innovator. Technically, Carol John Daly came out a couple months before him in the same magazine, Black Mask. No one's talking about Carol John Daly today, outside of like deep, pulp collectors who are really interested in crime fiction, and even those people don't have the highest opinion of Carol John Daly, who was he was a fine writer, but he was no Hammett. The pulp world was big because you didn't have television, you didn't have smartphones, you didn't have all the distractions that you do today. And so I think he was able to emerge because it was a smaller market. There was room for innovation. There was room for influence. And then you had the movies. The first movie, Roadhouse Nights, I think it was called, the adaptation of Red Harvest, wasn't great. But then you get the Maltese Falcon, the first version. There were 3 versions of it in a decade. Like, that doesn't happen today. Like, that's just crazy. But yeah, the serial publication and the novel publication of Maltese Falcon was, that was monumental. And then by the end of the decade, you get Raymond Chandler, who, obviously loved Hammett deeply and, wrote The Simple Art of Murder, rhapsodizing about what a great writer he was. And yet his style is totally different. The sort of stripped down prose of Hammett bears very little relation to the really eloquent poetry of Chandler. I don't even think that their detectives are even all that similar. I don't think I would want Sam Spade to be my friend. He's sleeping with his partner's wife. He has, doesn't really have a lot of moral qualms about some of the things he does. He has some qualms about other things, but I think the Chandler detective wants to be, I think he's a little bit more of a knight. I think he's, is fighting, in a compromised world to, trying to survive. In so many great Chandler movies today, his books sell well. Hammett with an eye, like, he's popular. There's no doubt about that. There's no movies, though. No streaming series. But even if there's a streaming series, there's a new streaming series, every 2 hours. If they would be able to sustain it for several seasons, is that going to be enough to sustain, his name for much longer? Who knows?
Don't fight it. Give in to it. Because you do want to sleep, Just fix your eyes on this one white flower, floating on the water. Empty your mind of every other thought. Follow the motion of the water, so smooth, not a ripple. Waters of forgetfulness, steady, deep, strong. Strange, isn't it, how the light is reflected? Little specks of light that move and move. It's restful here. It's peaceful. And you're very close to finding what you're looking for. You'll find them soon now. The guilty ones. When you're rested, gentle waters closing over you. Steady, deep, strong, drawing you down, down, down. Sleep. 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 Here he is, Professor Moriarty. Stand up, Mr. Holmes. Open your eyes. Face this way. Are you satisfied?
We are dealing with a clever man. He may be shamming. There's just one infallible test for profound hypnosis. You ready, Dr. Simnor?
What do you think are the qualities that a mystery writer must possess to really endure?
Well, as I said, you need a movie that really helps. Honestly, the stuff that sells today all had hit movies. Beyond that, in terms of the writing itself, you need something unique, and I think you need a sense of mystery that's larger than the mystery in the story. I mean, if you're talking about Hammitt with an E, think about the Maltese Falcon. What is so great about it? Is it the fact that you have a private detective who's trying to track down this bird? Is that really what brings people back to that? No. There have been plenty of, gotta find this object before, and there's been countless imitations after. And I mean, they don't really find the bird. I mean, it's that lingering sense, you can look and you can look, but you don't find it. You think about the Flitcraft episode in the middle of that, this character who experiences a near-death, a board falls down while he's walking. It's a random thing that could have ended his life. So he leaves his family, he leaves his job, spends a couple years wandering around. Eventually he, starts the same life again. People have spoken about it in terms of, the need to find order in life. Stuff like that is what lingers beyond the end of the Maltese Falcon. Think about Cornell Woolrich, Bride Wore Black. How do you handle spoilers? Should I say to viewers, stop now for spoilers, or can I talk?
Just go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, you've been warned. So Bride Wore Black. It's a woman that, on her wedding day, her husband was hit by a bullet and nobody knew who shot. She, figured out that it was a group of men driving by and it was a stray shot, and she spends the next several years of her life just going from person to person, in finding a way to enter their world and then get justice. And this is something that the book and the movie change. Truffaut changed the ending quite a bit, but in Woolrich's original book, after she, goes on this mission of vengeance, she's told that those men were innocent. And it was somebody else that she never knew was the shooter. And I mean, that to me is what Woolrich is about. It's this sense that the world is crazy, it's chaotic, and just like Flitcraft, you need to have some sort of artificial order. The rest of Woolrich's books also have this sense of illogic, and plenty of readers say it's too illogical for them. I love it. I love Woolrich. Phantom Lady, man goes out for the night, goes to a theater, meets a woman with a crazy hat. Then he goes home and finds out that his wife's been murdered, and he's, they think he did it, and the only alibi he has is this woman, and he goes out, nobody saw him with this woman. All he knows is that she had this crazy hat, and nobody remembers the hat. This sense that you can do something and, there's no evidence. Ultimately you have no alibi. Like, fate is really against you. That's Woolrich. You think about Day Keen, I was talking about, earlier. You get conked on the head. You wake up next to a body. It's a funny plot trope, but ultimately it's this idea that you can go to sleep and wake up and your entire world, is changed. And it's not even going to sleep. Somebody else has done this to you. That's how fragile the world is. And I think that comes from his, he grew up poor. He didn't have money. He didn't have education. He didn't, have, a trust fund or family backing him up. He wrote to survive, from one day to the next. And for a long time, he really struggled, and you can see that in the characters. And so those are the qualities that, endure. That's what makes these writers compelling. David Goodis, look at the names: Retreat from Oblivion, Somebody's Done For, Down There, The Moon in the Gutter, Dark Passage. It's characters that fall from grace. They wind up in the gutter, and they look up and they want a chance to come back, and they don't always. Sometimes they don't get it, and sometimes they get it and they screw up again. This sense of cyclical tragedy. That's what people remember more than necessarily solving the mystery. Dark Passage, you get to the end, you sort of get an end to the mystery, but when you find the solution, it doesn't solve anything. The mystery still lingers on, long after it's been solved.
Gentlemen, I think I can fit the pieces of this jigsaw puzzle together. Here is East 71st Street. This is the coal house, the yard, and the apartment house next door. Now let's have a look inside. This is McDonald's apartment. Directly opposite is the window of Archer Coe's bedroom. Underneath McDonald's apartment is the cozy little nest of Miss Delafield and her temporary guest, Mr. Grassi. This is the elevator, and here are the stairs that lead directly to the back entrance. From there, it's easy to reach the back entrance to the coal house across the yard. Now, that's the front hall, and here's the library.
So as a filmmaker, right, I'm always interested. There's obviously a lot of debate about the physical medium of film versus digital, and it got me thinking about Pulp Fiction.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think that the physical medium of pulp affected the way that these stories were read and received and thought about, and how they survive today? And I mean, how do you think about that in relation to digital archiving, for example?
I mean, what was so unique to the pulps is you can find photographs, and you can see it in old movies, in newsreels. You walk by the newsstand, you just see dozens of these magazines filled with short fiction. It was part of the community. You'd walk by, grab a pack of smokes or something. Get your pulp rag, read it on the way home. Maybe after dinner you read it. If you're a school kid, you get it on your way home from school. You trade it with your friends. it was very important. And as I said before, it's a different era. You don't have the distraction of smartphones and laptops and streaming this and Substack that. It was smaller, so these magazines had a really, they played an important role. And if you read the letters that fans would send, it's amazing. Like if you read like the aviation magazines, you get teenagers who are reading these things obsessively and comparing technical details from one story to another, and you get other people who are actual combat veterans or currently enlisted men writing and being like, you got the gun on the turret wrong in this. They took them seriously. And I think what's important is those magazines had a physical life. They weren't the best paper, and like over the years they've deteriorated, but they've survived so they can be passed along from collector to collector. Just gives it a little bit of a chance. And I personally think it's wonderful that as you're reading them, the pages come loose, sometimes they crumble, like it's sad, but they feel alive in a way that a digital file doesn't. And I should say the first thing is that, and this is, I feel bad for writers today, you post something on a website, how are people going to find it? They're not going to pass by that website on their way home from work, on their way to the subway, or once they get off the bus. You have to know what you're going to look for to find it. Sure, maybe someone's going to tweet it or post it on Facebook, but it's a lot harder today. And those websites, let's say you save the story and you download it. There may be like a corrupt element of that file from the moment you download it. You never know. Maybe it's even in the file if you're a writer yourself. That file could be dying from the moment that it's created and you wouldn't know. Whereas, the magazine, it dies as you read it. There's a chance that you could save it at some point. You could put it in a bit of a bag with a board or something. You could take better care of it. A file, you don't know what's happening. It's all hidden. And what goes on with these websites when they go down? The Internet Archive is backing stuff up, but they're in trouble right now. What happens if they get shut down? What happens to their backups? I don't know what the future is going to hold. Are there going to be collectors like Hammitt, trading printouts or PDFs 50 years from now? Are they going to be able to read PDFs 50 years from now?
So going off of that last question, I want to ask you about the role that collectors have in preserving these works and making them available to the public, for the future. And what do you think is that responsibility for a collector?
I think that is, one of the primary things that's why collectors are great, because they recognize what is interesting and important long before institutions do. They hold on to it, long after, publishers aren't making a dime off it anymore. I mean, it could even be, the creators themselves might not fully understand the importance. How many times do you hear about an author after they passed away, maybe before their fame, rose? that a family member destroyed all their papers, or that they themselves destroyed the papers. It's happened countless times, and it's probably going to happen again, sadly. But collectors, they should hold on to this stuff. Yes, but they shouldn't. I don't want to use the word hoard, but like, they shouldn't keep it private. They should let people know what they have. They should be willing to share it, and many of them do. If you reach out to collectors, especially if it's something that's a little obscure, sure, some of them, are gonna, have a sense of ownership to it, but you're gonna find other people that, truly understand that this is important. That's great that somebody else is interested in it, and that's how this history endures. That's how it survives.
I'm curious, as you follow the trends in the marketplace of sellers, of booksellers carrying these different works, have you seen trends as far as the availability of titles? Does it tend to go through trends of a lot being available and then a lot going into collections? And have you noticed any kind of trends like that in collecting over the years?
I mean, the internet, changed everything, because in the past you sold your books to a bookstore, or you went to a collector that knew what it was about, and then they might take it to a convention. So it sort of stayed in these areas where people knew where to find them, but you also had to have access to it. Internet, in a way, was great because then you could find anything anywhere, but then things started to dry up, prices started to kind of go crazy. I think it was also hard for collectors that were used to being able to sell them, because all of a sudden this little world was kind of taken away from them and it was blown up. A lot of dealers, some struggled that weren't able to adapt, and sometimes it's not even about their inability to adapt. It was just a very different world after the internet started. But yeah, some things do just disappear because it's not like there's a centralized, place to go find these things. You can check eBay, you can check, different online searches. But something else that's been happening is, some of the larger companies have been buying up collections and then jacking up the price. You start seeing pulps now going $500, $600, sometimes $1,000. Who are those people reading those magazines at $1,000, or has it just become an object you put behind plastic that you resell for more money 10 years from now? It's not the way pulps used to be, and it's I think it's a shame that that's what it's becoming, because Hammitt with an E is red. He's in print. You can get it from the Library of America. Some of his contemporaries that haven't had somebody like Hammitt with an I write about, they're still in these magazines that are falling to pieces, and they badly need someone to write articles about.
Are you aware of any works that have actually become lost as a result of every copy disappearing, either through being discarded or disintegrating?
Well, okay, can I do a little self-promotion here?
No, sure,
So,
please go ahead.
I'm working on a book about David Goodis. When he passed away, there was no bibliography that was complete for him. We know he worked under pseudonyms, but no one ever knew exactly which pseudonyms were him specifically, especially because a lot of these house names were shared between different writers. So that's been a quest of mine, going through sales records from the publishers themselves, trying to piece together, well, what did he write, what didn't he write? Now, at least for that, there's records, because some of the publishers have, put their papers in libraries and other institutions. For Goodis, he worked in radio. A lot of those radio scripts didn't have the authors' names on them. So, what did he write? We don't know. There isn't, at least that I haven't discovered yet, a really great repository with those sales records. Dave Keane also wrote for radio. We thankfully know that he wrote for Kitty Keene, and some of those episodes were registered for copyright. But if you go through them, there are gaps. It's almost like a clerical error. Episodes 1 through 85 have copyrights, and then it picks up with episode 93, and it's like, well, what happened to those in between? And it's within one of those gaps that he must have stopped writing, because it suddenly picks up again with a different writer. But even in that case, we know the episodes he wrote, but we don't have the scripts and we don't have the audio recordings. I haven't given up hope, but, that's part of the, that's what Mysteries is about, that sense that maybe I can, solve this, but, along the way, keep finding more mysteries.
Now I'm going to ask you the big question here. The appeal of the mystery genre, right? Now for me, mysteries provide a sense of comfort. There's a neat conclusion at the end that wraps up all the threads. They provide a sense of closure. Do you think this is ultimately the appeal of the mystery genre?
There's so many different types of mysteries out there. You got your cozies, your hard-boiled, your paranormal. There's a different type of mystery for every different type of reader out there, and for what every different, reader wants. I'm sure for some people they want that solution, and they not only want that solution, but they want the muffin recipe at the end of the book. And that's great. Those books are wonderful, they're well written, and they're there for certain readers. Not everyone wants that, though. We already talked about Maltese Falcon. That doesn't give that sense of closure. Do the Goodest books? We already talked about Dark Passage. The main character finds the solution to the mystery. He was framed for his wife's murder. He found out who did it and why. That doesn't solve the problem, which is that he's on the run. I think in Daikeen, usually they're framed for multiple murders, and by the end they're no longer framed. But that doesn't always solve the problem. The end of Bring Her Back Dead is really quite devastating. It begins with this married couple, and there's such a deep sense of mistrust that when someone takes a pot shot at the husband, he's not surprised. He's like, that's probably one of my wife's relatives. Of course they want to kill me. Like, how bad is your marriage that you expect someone to shoot at you? And at the end, he discovers that, that wasn't his wife's relative, but she says, like, you're the one who thought I distrusted you. You never talked to me about anything. Why didn't you just turn to me in bed and ask me questions? And you know what happens on the last page of the book? He's still hiding secrets from her, and it's like they're back together, they're embracing. It's the illusion of this union that's come back together, but that sense of distrust is still there in the character, and I think that's what Keene was writing about. that doesn't provide a sense of closure to me, but that's what makes it haunting.
And cut. Yeah, that's good.
Hey, what if you mind if we switch things up and I ask you a few questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, sweet. I got my notes.
All right, I'll come over here.
So Jackson, we've talked a lot about mystery, novels and the pulp short stories. Can you talk about the relationship of mystery and cinema?
Sure. There's a lot to say about it because really the cinema's connection with the mystery genre goes back to the very beginnings of it. I think there's something kind of inherently mysterious about film. And I always remember something when I first discovered silent movies. There was always something kind of mysterious about the whole idea to me, the colorless, silent world. And it seems like this is something that filmmakers tapped into from the very beginning with this, the trick films and going back to the, fantasies and mysteries. I feel like it's all connected somehow. I think because it plays on these special properties of film that amaze the audience. And if you go back to, for example, the very first movie to use the Sherlock Holmes character from 1900, Sherlock Holmes Baffled, it's called. It's not a traditional mystery story at all. It's a trick film with a burglar who appears and disappears when Sherlock Holmes comes into his study. And what I find interesting about that is even that early, before the narrative conventions had taken root, there was this, again, a connection between the properties of film and editing, what you could do with that, and the mystery genre, and creating a new kind of mystery. Of course, it's not the Sherlock Holmes that we think of today or that Arthur Conan Doyle envisioned. His Sherlock Holmes isn't baffled by a burglar who disappears and pops in and out of the frame. But I think it does get at the way that the earliest filmmakers were drawn to elements of mystery fiction and finding ways to do that uniquely in film. Do you think in some ways he resented Dashiell Hammett for imposing this expectation upon him by virtue of his name?
On a good day, he loved it. On a bad day, he was devastated. But I think that's what's inspired him.
And you mentioned that Hammett did appear at some conventions early on, right? Some literary conventions, crime fiction conventions.
Well, I'm sure he's been to some. Because how else are you going to get those really rare pulp magazines? He must have gone to conventions, but as far as appearing as Hammitt, that was never him. From the beginning, he liked a sense of mystery. I think, that's one of the things that drove him to write and obsessed him about the stories, and I think he wanted to be a little bit of a mystery himself. And he's a bit of a practical joker. So if you've been to a convention and you've seen Hammitt, that wasn't Hammitt. He hired someone to portray him.
Interesting. So he seems to be responsible for creating his own mystique.
Yeah, I think at first it was fun for him, but there's something a little haunting. I think he not only wants the mystery, I think he needs it at this point. I don't see him coming forward and saying, "Hey, I'm Hammitt. Come to my website. Here's a picture of me. Hit me up on Instagram." I don't see that happening.
So do you think it's this need for mystery in his life that is behind his current disappearance?
Of course. Like, what else? What drives a mystery? What drives a great mystery writer is a need for a sense of mystery, not just solving it, but there's some sort of there's something haunting about the idea of a mystery and the desire or the fear of a resolution. And I think, I think he needs that in his life. I think for him, mystery is not just something you do to make a quick buck. I think it's something he has to do. And it's led him to have this strange life where he's in the public eye and on people's bookshelves, but he's, hidden away somewhere private.
Do you think there's ever a chance that his personal life and his professional life as a writer and this need for mystery and these disappearances could blur to the point where he goes away and never comes back, is never found?
I sure hope not. I like the guy too much. I think if it came time for that, I'd like to think that I could, talk him out of it. I would hope that he would stop writing the books before it, the mystery would overtake him.
And you think that just as Hammitt needs this kind of mystery in his own life, do you think his readers need this mystery in their lives as well?
The mystery of Hammitt the author, or the mystery in the book?
The mystery of Hammitt the author.
I think they think it's funny. I mean, truth be told, how many of them actually have done what you're trying to do, track him down? Like, how many of them know how reclusive he is? As far as they know, they look on the back of the book and there's no picture of the guy.
Do you think Hammitt wants to be found, or do you think the readers want him found?
Hammitt himself does not want to be found. The readers, as long as there's another book on the shelf, that's all they care about.
Do you think I'll find him?
No.